Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for the third and final part of the Q&A, so let's go ahead and get to it. Alright, first question. Hey Jason, I've been out of the gym for about a year now, and I'm going to make a return soon. I'm a big fan of your channel, and I'd like to try one of your programs. At my peak, I was deadlifting 400, squatting 300, both for 3x3, or more. I was bench pressing 200 for 4 sets of 12. In passing videos, you said that muscle memory is a similar progression of noob gains. Is your beginner's 5x5 suitable for a guy like me? Man, I got a lot of muscle memory questions today back to back. I didn't even realize that when I was picking questions. I just went through and picked, a dozen or so good questions and just grabbed them and didn't even realize how many muscle memory ones. I'll keep this one short, brother. Yes, absolutely. You've taken this downtime. You had built a decent strength base up, a totally reasonable strength base again. And how long did you take? About a year from the gym? Oh yeah, come in, run my novice 5x5 or my linear hypertrophy, whichever one you want. You'll be back to where you were probably in less than a year. It'll take you less than a year to get that back. Only because of the strength that you had is actually reasonable strength that most people would gain on a year of my novice program. And since you've already done it before, as long as you eat enough, sleep enough, I bet you'll be back to where you were in 9 months instead of a year. I think it'll take you 9 months, ballpark. All right, next question. How would you reconcile growth stimulus versus specificity for a powerlifter who benches with a big arch for the competitive advantage? On one hand, specificity is usually considered king for raw, unenhanced lifters. On the other hand, a wide grip, big arch bench is somewhat shitty movement for stimulating growth if you have good mobility. I've got a few ideas of my own, but I'm curious what your take on it would be. Yeah, brother, I agree with you. I agree with your points, and I agree with your sentiment. Yes, normally specificity is king for raw lifters. All this large amount of accessory work that people do tends to work better for equipped lifters. Now, I'm not saying some accessory work doesn't help for raw lifters, but it sure doesn't need to be your focus. The problem is, like you said, the big arch ultra wide grip is such a short range of motion that it's hard to build overall muscle mass with, and that's something people forget. People get into all these big heavy partials thinking because they're lifting heavier weight they're going to build muscle easier. Actually, it's harder to build muscle with heavy partials. You actually might struggle to gain the amount of muscle you would gain with full range of motion even with the same amount of fatigue. And it should be obvious if you look at the way a muscle contracts as to why that is. You just don't have the ability to recruit every available muscle fiber. You have a leverage advantage, though, that lets you lift more weight. So the issue we have here is that. And then number two, recovery. It beats your shoulders up and it beats your wrist up more. It's just harder to recover from training that way. So what I usually recommend, you need to train with less arch and with a narrower grip. You need to keep those pinkies inside the rings. All right, whether you do a true closed grip or you just stay somewhat closed grip, keeping the pinkies in the rings, no wider than the edge of the rings, is easier on your shoulders, and it's going to give you better overall chest development. All right, that better overall development you're going to get from training that way with less strain on your shoulders and less strain on your wrist will give you the strength base to allow you to lift more with the other. And it's not because specificity doesn't reign, because really the specificity is pretty similar on the two. It's just not exact. It's the issue of the actual training with that exact technique for specificity. It's harder to build muscle mass with, and therefore you're getting only the specificity with a little less muscle mass gains. Whereas in doing it the other way, it's a similar enough movement pattern that has more growth potential and less injury potential that you're still going to be okay to do it. You're probably going to be better off doing it. And it's not to say that guys can't be successful the other way. They can. I just don't think it's the safest way. I think they're not going to be any more successful than doing it the way that I just described, but I think they're going to be at a higher risk of injury, inflammation, joint pain, things like that. So it makes it not really worth it. All right, next question. Hey, Jason. What would be the simple way to progress on power cleans? I'm doing a 3 times a week full body using the old school progression with 5 to 10 reps for 11 months now, but I can't deadlift 3 times a week anymore since I have important university stuff coming up. However, just replacing deadlifts doesn't seem right since power cleans need to be done with lower reps. And in that case, I would be mixing rep ranges. I don't know a simple progression method for, let's say, a 3x3 clean. Actually, I'm not going to say 3x3. You probably need to do 5x3. You need more volume on that with those triples to really get the most out of the clean. Because of the technical nature of that exercise, you need practice to get good at it. You need more reps, which means not necessarily more reps per set, but more total sets. What would be a good pattern? Figure up about what you think your 3-rep max would be. All right, figure it out. Reduce it by, I don't know, 15%. In other words, at least test a power clean. See what feels like a fairly heavy power clean for you. And that might be a better way. Practice a power clean and see what feels heavy. If 150 pounds feels heavy, reduce it by maybe 20% off of 1 rep, and then build 5 sets of 3 with it. And when you master it with good form with that weight, add 5 pounds. When you master it again with that weight with good form for 5 sets of 3, add 5 pounds. If it starts to become problematic, switch over and get microplates and add 2.5 pounds. You don't need to complicate this. But the thing you need to remember is that this is a highly technical exercise, and it does take practice. It's not just about building hypertrophy on a lift like this. It's one of those lifts you're really going to have to master it. So I'm going to say you probably need to be doing a minimum of 5 sets. Not the 3x3, and progress slowly. Don't try to progress fast on a technical exercise like this. 5-pound jumps at first are fine, and eventually switching to 2.5-pound jumps probably fine also. Again, because you're incorporating this into a larger training system, you might not necessarily want to use a progression that an Olympic lifter uses. You can be pretty conservative with it, with what you're trying to do. All right, next question. Hi Jason, based on the research you discussed on AAS in the past and showing that training methods only make a small difference in the amount of muscle gained, then wouldn't it make sense for those using for cosmetic reasons to focus more on safety and technique? We see lots of bodybuilders needing a lot of surgeries all the time. Thank you for shedding some light on the darkness of idiocy. Yeah, that's a good question. That's a great question. The reality is we know based upon the data out there that the higher doses that people go on of any of these substances, particularly these big cocktails, the less the way they train actually matters for hypertrophy. The way you train matters for strength a lot more than it matters for size when people go on stuff. All right, it really does. In other words, the training style that they use, as long as their biceps are being trained and being fatigued, probably don't matter. As long as the muscle's being fatigued significantly, do any sort of training protocol, any technique, any form, any rep scheme, any set scheme, any volume scheme, it is going to grow rapidly when people are on substances. And you have a dose-dependent response in that growth. In other words, someone who's using 3 times the amount of stuff, their bicep is going to go faster from the same workout than if they had used 1/3 of the stuff. All right, that is proven scientific fact, not subject to debate. So the question becomes, what can they do about that to prevent the injuries? Don't train like an idiot. The problem is that most bodybuilders rely on their genetics and they rely on drugs to get where they are. Most of them never learn the basics. They just pick up bro lore in the gym, and they learn stuff that other bodybuilders have learned. And because bodybuilders get so caught up in this things like mind-muscle connection instead of actually doing work, they oftentimes mistake pain for stimulation. There are countless variations of some of these isolation movements that I've pointed out cause inflammation, they cause joint damage, all sorts of stuff, but they hurt more, they burn more. So therefore, these guys think things like, well, this must be producing more results, and then they start telling everyone to do it, and it becomes mainstream, and it destroys elbows, it destroys shoulders. Some of these little isolation movements do. Because they hurt more, they're just assuming they're better, because they don't bother to learn physiology. They just carry on traditions they're taught by each other instead of bothering to learn anything. And again, bad technique, bad form, using crutches to deal with everything. If something hurts, just wrap it up. Oh, if something hurts, you probably just aren't warming it up enough. You just need to warm it up more and put a sleeve on it. Yeah, that'll help. Well, in reality, that's not going to help at all. It's putting tight stuff over it or whatever to keep it warm or cut off blood flow just masks the pain. It masks the damage you're inflicting. So yeah, truth be told, most of these guys, since it doesn't matter how they train so much, they would probably do better just training with good technique, good form, not using silly movements that damage things. Actually research this stuff themselves and train maybe the way a physical therapist would recommend instead of training for anything else, because they're going to get big no matter what they do. Like I always say, guys, strength training is everything for daddies. It is. Guys go on several grams of gear, their strength doesn't matter that much. All that matters is that they not get hurt, that they not get injured. But then again, the counter argument would be made, a lot of these guys are going to die young anyways. Do they really care if they have a bunch of beat up joints and tendons? I mean, Rich Piana didn't make it past 46. Did it really matter? So that's kind of the counter argument the other way. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.